What's going on, you guys? Chris Rockwell here, checking in. Cheers. It's afternoon. It's not morning time. I've got the blinds closed because it's so bright out today. Um, it just casted shadows inside of here and couldn't see the cool backdrop anyway. I tried to get the lighting set up. I mean, as far as the angles, so you could see the mountain in the back and make it really cool and all that shit. But it didn't work out. So I closed the blinds, and here we are. I just got back from taking a drive with the dogs out to this reservoir in the middle of, like, it's way out, and it's really cool though. It's almost like a different planet. It's almost like you're on Mars or something. It's just, but it's really cool, and it's for the most part it's really pristine. And you take this nice drive, everything's really cool, and there's cattle ranch, like old school ranches, and that are really cool, and well taken care of, like the Wild West kind of stuff. It's how you would imagine it, like Bonanza or some shit like that. And but all of a sudden you come around a corner and there are these massive, massive windmills, and they're huge, man. I know a lot of you have seen them on videos, and some of you have seen them in person. And you know, I've I posted a short called Windwalker, just a short of a catching a video of these windmills going the day before, because they're cool to when you get up close. It's kind of cool, they're these huge things, and the wind's moving these giant things, and there's rows of them. They're huge, and they occupy an entire ridge of a mountain, and in this case, it's multiple ridges in this vicinity by this reservoir. So, what's my take on the whole thing? It's funny, I got mixed messages from different people on the YouTube short and on Facebook as a story. And I'm always curious just what people think, you know what I mean? Especially right now, because everything has changed with regard to alternative energy sources, and there's always an extreme pendulum, I find, with the masses. So right now, what was once really cool as far as green energy and what the windmills and solar power represent. Here's my take on it. Um, can the wind produce energy? Yeah. Um, is it an obvious replacement for an energy source like oil? It seems to be obvious. There's a lot of propaganda that goes into, selling windmills and solar grids and all this stuff. With a little bit of research like I've done, and spending some time, just in this case, actually being around a windmill farm in a place that I actually really liked until I came over the ridge, and it's such a shock, man. So I started to think about, I saw comments from people that I don't even know, talking about this is so much better to see than oil wells. Here's my take. I spent a lot of time driving down because I had grandparents who lived in Los Angeles, and we would drive down there, and I remember seeing all these oil wells and going through Bakersfield into LA, different spots. There's oil wells, like in certain spots. There's, like, you go down in the city and there's certain areas where there's still a ton of oil wells, and they're working. It's not attractive, but when you come around a dirt road and you're enjoying your afternoon and you're taking a drive out in the middle of nowhere because it's beautiful, it's nature, and it's all that because you want to connect with nature, coming around a corner and seeing these megaliths that are just such eyesores. It the visual pollution that the windmills cause to nature, just that alone, any so-called person who cares about nature and would ever really call themselves an environmentalist, because a real nature person who spends time in nature instead of just being a metropolitan, clown who takes a hike every once in a while but wears Patagonia all the time, and preaches about how green they are and how much, they're out in nature. Most aren't. I've worked with them in Silicon Valley and in the cities. They talk about it a lot, but they don't end up doing it much. But they sure know a lot about the environment. So here's the reality. The amount of oil, and this is for the young people in particular, and just for people who been who bought into just the overall kind of alternative green energy resource formula that seems to make sense. And in theory, it does. It's like, hey, that's great. It doesn't release any pollutions and all this and that. But that's not true. The amount of oil to generate the energy and the actual products required in a windmill, that oil footprint and ongoing footprint is massive. It's so big, dude. Like one of these blades alone, just to produce it, the amount of oil for the energy to make that shit is super, super massive on as far as like carbon footprint and oil footprint, actual using oil to create energy, to create products, to drive the whole damn thing. And by the way, here's the other thing. The environmental impact is massive. So I care about that shit for real. And it's a disgrace because not only do they just go into native land, that is pristine, and they just bludgeon it, trench it up, dig it deep. It doesn't matter. But here's the other catch. As I watched today, and I filmed it, there was oil spewing out the back of one of those windmills. And right next to that windmill that was spewing oil out the back, it's hard to not mistaken it, to see what it actually is, because the windmills are white and oil is black. So oil spewing onto the back, coming out of the machine, the mechanism. I've talked to a few people because I wanted to not just think I know what I'm talking about because I saw a windmill going around in a circle. I've talked to some people and done some research on this actual company. It's a private company. It's changed hands at least once from just the time I've been here. Windwave was, I think, the name of it originally. Cool name. That was a cool brand. The concept's cool, but as far as the local people, they didn't want it. Not at all. It's an insult to why they live here, because they want to live in a wild, pristine nature environment, and rich landowners who had a dominant foothold in politics and money and power and all that shit, man. They drove it through. It took a long time, but they ended up making it happen. So, and I drove that road today thinking about to myself, like, if I was a fifth generation kid, grew up, tons of money and tons of land and prominence and power, would I do this? Because I can tell you what, somebody's making a ton of money on this one wind farm. My take is also this, in terms of pros and cons, because there are pros and cons. It's not like, well, Trump's in office now, so wind's stupid. That I'm hearing a lot of that, but it's never that simple, man. It's not black and white, not always. And in this case, it's not black and white. Like, let's not be dumb. If something makes sense, let's do it. But it has to be significantly better than the existing systems that are being improved in terms of their efficiency. I'm talking about oil industry as a whole. Much more strict rules, dude. I have a brother and his wife that are consultants inside of the oil company, inside the actual oil wells, and they go there because they have to certify the wells in terms of an emergency exit strategy and how the cleanup and all that stuff. Like, and we've been talking about it a little bit more, and so as that industry has a lot more microscope, kind of more of a microscope on it, as far as the environmental responsibility, and also, you guys, it's so expensive if they screw up that private industry oil companies are highly motivated to not spill oil. So that's happening at a rate that's never happened before, which is a good thing that been pressured from outside forces, and I think that's great because they were sloppy and they were arrogant and they didn't give a shit and they polluted a lot. They really did. So I'm not pro oil companies. Those guys are dirtbags. They're like bankers. They'll go into a country, have the leader taken out, put in someone else that does what they want to do so they can rape and pillage the oil out of the ground in some poor third world country and say they're going to turn it into something nice, and 75 years later it's worse than it was when they showed up. So I'm not giving them any kind of slack. What I'm saying is reality of economics. There's not a better large scale, key point, large scale solution. I think some of these, water, wind, and sun, there are places for that stuff. But on scale, the cost to produce, here's the other thing, the cost to produce solar products to capture the sun, to turn it into energy, is all petroleum driven on mass scale once again. And they have a lifespan. They become obsolete over a short period of time. So like these are real carbon footprint, oil footprint costs, environmental impact factors that are real. So I'm a realist, and I also believe that the average person is far more wasteful and environmentally damaging than a large scale company in this day and age if things are being monitored properly. And I think money speaks, man. And money is demanding that these industries like oil have to be more regulated, which they are now, plenty of regulation now. But they need to be allowed to do their thing, man. And if they do it, they can create efficiencies for a long period of time relative to the oil cost, environmental damage, and inefficiencies of these alternative energy sources. So, if there's spots where it makes sense, and that's great, and I applaud that. But realistically, for such a selfish society that is hyper consumer and has an oil footprint that is embarrassing on average, it's like, let's be a little humble about our moral stance on oil versus windmills. You know what I mean? Like, we don't live that efficiently. Any young person who's crying about oil right now, which that's the youth has been completely propagandized, like most of the young generations propagandized about the environment because it's a good way to generate a lot of revenue to go back into really bad people's pockets. You know what I mean? Guilt people, and the money comes out. You start with religion's the top spot, but the environment is up there too, the way they spin it all together. So, as I was watching these windmills, and I was thinking all of the lack of knowledge of how economics work, and participating in that economic ecosystem like I have, and listening to people on the sidelines in the stands who've never experienced what the cause and effect of any industry, what it takes to actually build a business, the actual cost of time and the things in the human power resources that it takes to actually make something happen. And I thought about that when I looked at those windmills. I'm like, man, the amount of money, like there's only a couple of people making a ton of money on that, but the cost of it, like the long-term damage is crazy, man. It'd be less damaging to drill wells, in about 5 of those spots, and in comparison to those 20, 50, or actually it was more, about 50 of those windmills, or some kind of proportional thing that seems reasonable, it'd be far less visually damaging, and it would probably produce over time far more efficient energy that's probably more efficient, environmentally efficient. And I think that's something to at least ponder. I thought about that a lot today up there. I kind of was just pondering the whole thing based on, listening to some of the comments, and I appreciate listening to that. It's made me think, but there's never some magic bullet, there's never some magic secret, that's going to be able to transform the way we consume energy. And that's the key point. It's not about how it's made. It's about how we as consumers choose to consume energy in all forms, right? So, energetic feed. We are definitely that being, that creature. So I'm happy that it's a new era for energy, and I do think it is a very big positive to invest in domestic energy. I think it makes total sense. We have lots of it, so, and we are managing those places. They'll always be kind of dirty, but I just mean in terms of generally speaking, or comparatively speaking to, just only a couple decades ago, it's a big difference, So I don't know, we humans are pretty messy. So, and we consume a lot, we waste a lot. So it's easy to pot shot the oil, the whole industry and all of that. But it's kind of like how the masses blame the bankers for poor, self-centered consuming behaviors that are just detrimental, and predictable. And the bankers know that. So whose fault is it? The chicken or the egg? And when those windmills are spinning around, I can tell you that happened because, a lot of people are benefiting from that green movement in energy, but it's not sustainable. For younger people, this happened in the 70s the same way. We just have a short memory. Humans have a very short memory. So this cycle is dying. There's a new leader in town who is a realist about what it takes to actually build very complicated things. To build a skyscraper in New York, to build any business in New York at scale, is a daunting process, and it takes a lot of collaborating with lots of different power structures that are just brutal. So, that's reality. That's really what it takes, especially on large scale. And so energy is a foundation of that whole thing. And I think it's worth talking about because it has a reverberating effect in the economics of our whole world, and as us as individual consumers, in a very dramatic way. So, yeah, to me, it's like, I got to be conscious about what I consume, and own where the source is, right? Whatever product it is, or what did it take to actually make this product? So that's just something I kind of ponder all the time. You guys have a great day, and I will talk to you later. All right, see ya.